Here's something that would have been impossible 5 years ago. Trump just claimed that Apple and Intel have closed a deal to manufacture chips right here in the United States. Now, that might not sound dramatic at first, but here's why it actually is. For the last 40 years, American chip manufacturing has been nearly extinct. We used to dominate this industry, but we outsourced it all to Taiwan and South Korea, and we handed over the keys to the global economy in the process. Today, if you want a cutting-edge semiconductor, the tiny brain inside your iPhone, your laptop, every smart device you own, you're buying it from overseas, and you're dependent on geopolitical tensions and supply chain chaos that can collapse overnight. A deal like this, if real, would be the largest reshoring effort in technology manufacturing in decades. And it comes at a moment when the entire world is racing to build AI chips faster than anyone else. So the question isn't whether this deal matters, it's whether it's actually real and what it could mean for the future of technology. To understand why this matters, we need to rewind to the 1980s and 1990s. Back then, the United States was the undisputed leader in semiconductor manufacturing. Intel, Motorola, National Semiconductor, American companies absolutely dominated. But then globalization happened. United States companies realized they could make more profit by shipping manufacturing overseas to countries with cheaper labor. Taiwan invested billions in building fabs, that's the term for semiconductor factories, and became the world center for chip production. South Korea built up Samsung and SK Hynix, and the United States just stopped. By 2020, America controlled less than 10% of global semiconductor manufacturing capacity. Think about that. The country that invented the microchip now makes barely 1/10 of the world's supply. We became completely dependent on Taiwan for advanced chips, and Taiwan sits just 100 kilometers off the coast of China. So every geopolitical tension, every threat, every trade dispute suddenly puts the entire Western tech industry at risk. During COVID, chip shortages crippled car production and delayed iPhone releases by months. Supply chains broke, and we realized we'd made a massive strategic mistake by abandoning manufacturing entirely. That's when the reshoring movement started. So what's this alleged Apple-Intel deal actually supposed to be? According to Trump's claim, Apple and Intel are joining forces to build semiconductor manufacturing capacity in the United States. Now, Intel has already been trying to expand United States production for a few years with significant government support, billions in subsidies from the CHIPS Act, which was designed to bring manufacturing back home. But pairing that with Apple is a game changer. Apple's the world's largest chip designer. They invented the neural engine inside every iPhone. They've got custom chips in their watches, their tablets, their laptops. If Apple commits to designing chips specifically for United States-based production, that creates a guaranteed customer and a reason for these factories to actually exist. It's not just idle capacity sitting around costing money, it's real demand from one of the world's most profitable companies. The scale we are talking about is staggering. Apple alone ships roughly 300 million devices every year, many of which need custom semiconductors. If even a portion of those chips get manufactured in the United States instead of Taiwan or South Korea, you're talking about tens of thousands of high-paying manufacturing jobs. Engineers, technicians, factory workers, entire supply chains needed just to support production. But here's the thing nobody's talking about. Let's get specific about what products we're actually talking about. The Apple-designed chips that power iPhones, the A-series processors, each one is phenomenally complex. An iPhone 15 processor has 19 billion transistors packed onto a piece of silicon the size of your thumbnail. If Apple decides to manufacture even a fraction of these in the United States, it's a complete reversal of the last 30 years of electronics manufacturing. We're not talking about simple components anymore. We are talking about cutting-edge processors that require multi-billion-dollar fabs with dust-free cleanrooms and equipment accurate to the atomic level. Then there's Intel itself. Intel makes server chips, data center chips, chips that power the cloud infrastructure running all our AI models. If Intel ramps up United States production of these, every data center expansion in North America could prioritize American-made semiconductors. And here's where AI comes in. Right now, NVIDIA and other chip makers are shipping AI accelerators, those GPU processors for training large language models, all over the world from overseas fabs. If the United States can manufacture these domestically, suddenly American companies have first access, shorter supply chains, and none of the geopolitical risk. Think of it like this. Instead of ordering semiconductors from overseas and waiting weeks for them to arrive, factories and companies across America could have chips on their doorstep in days. Right now, Taiwan manufactures roughly 60% of the world's semiconductors and over 90% of the most advanced chips. That's not a coincidence. It's the result of 40 years of investment, expertise, and competing for that dominance. South Korea's got Samsung and SK Hynix. China's been pouring hundreds of billions into semiconductor development to catch up. And the United States, we've got scattered fabs, mostly owned by Intel, producing older generation chips. If the Apple-Intel deal goes through, it starts to rebalance that equation. But let's be clear, this isn't going to make America suddenly manufacture 60% of the world's chips next year. It's a single partnership between two companies. What it does do is set a precedent. It says that manufacturing semiconductors in America is economically viable again. It attracts other companies, Samsung, TSMC, others might follow. It builds expertise and creates a nucleus of manufacturing that can grow. The comparison here is actually like the space race in the 1960s. When America committed to going to the moon, it wasn't just about one rocket ship. It inspired an entire ecosystem of contractors, suppliers, and innovations that transformed the economy for decades. This chip deal could spark something similar, a reshoring wave that brings strategic manufacturing back home. And that's where the real story gets complicated. Here's where the geopolitical stakes get real. The United States is locked in a tech competition with China right now, an actual race to dominate artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and quantum computing. China's been trying to build indigenous chip manufacturing for years, but they've hit walls because they can't get access to advanced equipment from Dutch and American companies. The United States has strategic leverage, and that leverage depends on keeping chip manufacturing concentrated in friendly countries like Taiwan and South Korea. But what happens if America starts making its own chips? Suddenly, the United States doesn't need to be so dependent on Taiwan. That sounds good, but it also changes the geopolitical calculus. Taiwan's become an economic anchor for the region. Its chip industry keeps everyone wealthy and invested in stability. If the United States starts pulling manufacturing back home, it weakens Taiwan's position. At the same time, it strengthens America's leverage in negotiations with China. The implications ripple outward. If more companies follow Apple and Intel, you're talking about reshoring not just semiconductors, but an entire industrial supply chain. That means manufacturing jobs coming back to America, thousands of them. Higher wages, more tax revenue. Economic growth concentrated outside Silicon Valley, but it also means higher costs for companies, potentially higher prices for consumers. And it means a fragmentation of the global supply chain that's existed for 40 years. That's a massive reset. So how do you know if this Apple-Intel deal is actually real? Trump made the claim, but where's the actual evidence? Here's what to watch for. First, official statements. Apple and Intel will issue a joint press release if this is genuine. They'll announce the deal, they'll give timelines, they'll talk about investment amounts and job creation. That's the clearest signal. Second, look for regulatory filings. A deal this size would require approvals, possibly subsidies from the government, and transparency about how much money's involved. Check the SEC filings from both companies. They're required to disclose material business developments. Third, watch for concrete details about location, which states, which cities, which fabs specifically. Real plans come with specifics. Vague announcements are red flags. Fourth, track the United States government response. Will they provide subsidies? The CHIPS Act allocated billions for exactly this kind of reshoring. If the administration backs this with actual funding, that's a real signal. And fifth, pay attention to other tech companies. Watch whether Samsung, TSMC, Qualcomm, or other chip designers start announcing United States manufacturing plans. If it's just Apple and Intel, it's a single partnership. If multiple companies follow, it's a trend. The timeline matters too. Watch for announcements within the next 30 to 90 days. That's when the real evidence will surface. So here's what this Apple-Intel deal actually means for you. The chips inside your devices probably won't change overnight. Manufacturing plants take years to build and ramp up. But what does change is the trajectory. If this deal is real and more companies follow, the next decade of computing hardware gets built differently. It means American jobs, American expertise, and American independence in a technology that's absolutely critical to our future. It means the global supply chain that broke during COVID might actually get stronger, and it signals to the world that the era of pure outsourcing might be ending. China's watching this closely. Taiwan's watching this closely. Every country building their own semiconductor ambitions is taking notes. This isn't just about Apple and Intel, it's about reshaping how the world builds the technology you depend on every day. The next few months will tell us whether Trump's claim is genuine or just political theater. Watch for those official announcements, track the regulatory filings, and pay attention to whether other companies follow. Because if this reshoring trend is real, we're looking at one of the biggest structural changes in technology manufacturing since the 1980s. That's the story that's just getting started. For more on breakthroughs in AI and tech, follow for daily AI news.